be following that for you. Now, have you got a pen pal? Probably as a kid or as a teenager you might well have done. Mine was Sabina in Andernach in Germany. Did a little exchange trip there. I was hopelessly homesick and couldn't wait to get back onto the plane, to the point where I started packing the day I arrived and put another bit into the suitcase every day until it was time to go home. Not the most successful of trips, nothing against Sabina, just me being a bit like that. But if you have a pen pal as a child, it's a very different thing, I'm thinking, to being a pen pal as an adult, particularly if it's a man who has potentially not long to live. This is the case then when it started, when my guest today, Swithin Fry from Gloucester, began writing to a death row prisoner. He started writing to inmate Timothy Coleman. He's in a correctional institution in Ohio for aggravated murder. He started it then through sort of a fluke incident, which we'll hear from him in a moment. Timothy is said to have killed a prosecution witness in a drugs case against him. 6 months of writing letters, and now Swithin has been out to meet him, and now, in fact, has got so involved with the whole situation that Tim Coleman is in that he's really trying to make headway about getting him off death row, effectively, if that could possibly be possible. Swithin Fry joins me now in the studio. Hello, good afternoon to you.
Hello.
So I need to ask that, how do you get out to write to a death row prisoner? How did that become about?
I saw an advert in Big Issue. There are two main organisations in the UK who coordinate, and so I had to write a letter of application, I suppose. And I saw the advert, and I thought, because I was retired, I had retired about a year previous, and I thought, what will it take to write to someone on death row? I started because I'm basically anti-death penalty. I always have been, I suppose, really, without realising so. And I thought, wow, some poor person is on, what a life, And so I applied, and I thought, what's it going to take? A couple of hours a month, maybe. And they said, yeah, here you go, you pass.
You're off.
You're off. And here's the name. And they gave me Tim's name. And off I went. And I wrote to him and introduced myself. He had already been told by the coordinator for Ohio State of the writing group that I would be writing. And that's how it started.
So how much did you know about him and his case initially? Nothing. So all you knew was a name, and that he was on death row.
All I knew was a name. Yeah.
Did you Google? You must have done something.
No,
you must have.
No, you
didn't. You didn't want to know. That's very interesting.
No.
How highly evolved. Because I would have been instantly thinking, let's find out a bit,
No, I didn't want to know. But interestingly enough, though, in his first letter back to me, I think it was the 6th sentence, he started talking about his innocence, his being innocent, you see. And at the time, I didn't feel comfortable, talking about this at all. And so I emailed the coordinator for the writing group, and I said, what do I do? And she emailed back and said, you do what you want. If you feel like writing about his case, do so. And if you don't feel comfortable, don't. So I didn't.
So what did you write about?
Well, so in my letter back to him, in my reply back to his first letter, when he went on so much about his innocence, I kind of said something banal like, I hope and pray that the truth will out. And then I talked about daffodils and the snowdrops and my grandson's potty training, because...
Well, you've got to start a connection somewhere, haven't you?
Absolutely. This was a real woman who got murdered, and at the time, this was a year and a half ago now, at the time it felt very, very difficult to process.
Because honestly, the world's prisons are full of innocent people. That's what they say.
Yes,
everybody protests their innocence.
Absolutely.
So why would it be any different?
That was precisely my feeling, actually. And until about 6 months after we started writing, I happened to be in America. I'd never been before, and I was 63 then, and I thought, well, the chance of going to America again, very, very slim. I felt I ought, I suppose, to go and see him.
So it was an ought, not a want, really? You just thought, well...
Well, it was a bit of each, but I think the ought outweighed the want. And so I went, and...
How was it?
Surreal. Very, very surreal. It's just unimaginable. and to feel what it must be like for someone on death row. Just unimaginable. It was actually much more informal than I thought. What I had been expecting was I go into a room, a bit like the studio here. You know, there's a glass window. I'm one side, safely one side, and the inmates, the murderers, are the other side. But it wasn't like that at all. It was a disused prison block, a bit like you might find in Porridge. You know, remember Porridge program and the prison blocks there, but big, much bigger. This was America, and the whole of the ground floor, there were tables, about 25 tables there, hexagonal tables, and it was empty apart from this one guy at the end. When I went in, and the officer met me, the officer in charge of the visiting room met me, and he said, "There you go, there he is," and there was Tim right down the bottom, and.
What was that meeting like? It's very different to writing something when you're eyeball to eyeball, isn't it?
Well, it was bizarre and surreal because we were at this little hexagonal table with the very hard seats, and he had manacles around his ankles, a chain from manacle to manacle, and the chain was chained to the floor. And this was very visible. Oh, was I scared? Yes, I was scared. Before as I was waiting outside, thinking, "Am I doing the right thing?" before going in.
So it wasn't him you were scared of; it was the situation. Wasn't it? Right.
Well,
bit of both.
I wasn't scared of him because I felt, if there was any chance of him going berserk, they're not going to let me in. And the prison officer, had a gun and a truncheon and all sorts, and there were prison officers outside in the corridor with guns. I didn't feel frightened. And the other reason why I didn't feel frightened, because as I walked down towards him, so he gave me this great, big smile, and he stood up and he flung his arms out and gave me a big welcome hug. And that kind of melted any fear instantly. And it was actually, I was with him for a whole day and a half, the next morning as well. And I can say I went into the prison thinking the great American legal system can't have got this wrong. This guy, despite his protestations, like you say, everyone says, don't they? I went in thinking, yeah, of course this guy's a murderer. But, and I came out 80% sure he was innocent. And then later on his attorney emailed me his defence documents once I was back home. And having read those, it convinced me more and more that his original trial had not been handled well. And that's all he's asking for. He's asking for a retrial. He's not asking to come off, but obviously that's what he wants. He's just asking for a retrial so that the evidence that was put badly before, there's new evidence as well.
I'm interested because this is very relevant, I think, to mention that Tim is black, because
yes, it is relevant.
The number of black prisoners, male prisoners in America, well, in prisons generally, I think, in Britain as well, but is very disproportionate, isn't it? I mean,
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Do you think that is relevant? Did it have any bearing on his case, or just generally, do you think?
No, I don't. You're right, and I do think it had bearing. I don't know the details, but there was a situation in his original trial where there were very few black jurors, and one of them was objected to by the prosecution and was removed. So I think as I say, I'm not sure about facts, but I think it was down to one black juror in I don't know, 10 is it? 10 12 through.
Yeah.
And
So. How actively then once you got persuaded by your own thoughts that he was an innocent man, wrongly convicted, or was certainly deserving of a retrial, did you think, well, then I need to start fighting for him? Did it become a personal thing?
Well, I suppose it did. Because suddenly this man who I had been corresponding with as a pen pal suddenly became a friend, and suddenly I had a friend on death row who I felt was innocent.
It's human being to human being, it became.
Yes. So
his clock, his ticking clock, is now your ticking clock, is it?
Yeah, I guess it is. Yes, it is. No, it is. Yes, you're right. He's got one mandatory appeal left to go, and then he's got another appeal which he might be allowed or might not.
And how many? I don't know. Ohio, is it quite speedy to kill people on death row? Because some states are much more.
No, it'll probably take a couple of years to go
some
through
are
that
much
system.
more swift than others.
But he's been there. He's been on death row for 15, 16 years already.
How old is he now?
He's in his early 40s.
Yeah.
43, 44, I think now. Yeah.
So where does it go from there then? Because this is not about a pen pal anymore now, is it? This is about, as you say, somebody you consider a friend and someone who has the fight of their life, not only on their hands but on your hands.
It's just really trying to raise support. I mean, eventually I will probably do one of these sort of email petitions. It's just trying to raise support for him to get a retrial, because that's not automatic, of course. So that's it, really. And I think one of the things that really clinched it for me, apart from that I have seen the defence documents, and they are dodgy, the prosecution stuff, it is dodgy. What clinched it for me was that during one of the appeal procedures, he was offered life without parole. So life without parole is life, you throw away the key. The other thing that happens in life without parole is that you lose your appeal rights. And he turned it down. He said, no, I'm innocent. I need my appeal rights. So he stayed on death row. At the end of the day, there are two people who know. The murderer knows and Tim knows. And they may be one and the same person, but I don't know. I just think he needs a retrial.
So how do you feel now then, with the benefit of retrospect, of making that decision almost on a whim to start writing to somebody, to apply to write to someone for that advert? Do you have regrets? Because wouldn't life be more simple if you hadn't got yourself in this ethical dilemma?
No, I don't regret it in the slightest. I mean, as I say, we're friends now, and you can't regret friends, can you?
But the reality is that he may well be put to death.
Yes.
And how are you going to deal with that if you genuinely do believe that he's innocent?
With great difficulty. I want to be there. With an execution, there is a visiting room where, like a glass partition at the side where you can watch. You have to have witnesses watching an execution. I think it's part of the legal process. And I would like to be on that list of observers, to be there for him. If it goes, I just hope it doesn't go there. But to be there for him. Have you
spoken to him about that?
No.
What do you think he'd say yes to you being there?
I do. Yes, I do think he would. On the whole, we keep up, if you like, a pretense of hope, because I think without hope, then he's lost. I think really he'll lose the will to fight, and he does need that to keep going.
So when you write now, instead of avoiding discussing innocence versus guilt in his case, are your letters full of that, or is there still details about potty training?
No, not full of it. Not full of it. That would be too
and
boring.
The daffodils.
That would be too boring. Yeah, potty training, the daffodils, of course. Of course, we are human.
Well, very interesting to speak to you. Thank you very much. If people want to find out more about Tim's case, is there a way to do that?
The thing to do really is to email me on. Is it okay to give it out? Yeah. So it's deathrowtim. That's deathrowtim, all one word, at gmail.com. Because I haven't got a website yet, and I haven't got a petition list yet. But if people are interested, really, whatever their comments, I'm more than happy to respond. Yeah, deathrowtim at gmail.com.
Lovely to speak to you, Swithin. Thank you very much. Keep in touch so we can find out how things progress one way or the other. Swithin Fry, then, from Gloucester, who on a whim started writing to a death row prisoner, and it's now kind of taken over his life in a way. Deathrowtim at gmail.com if you would like to find out more about Tim's case.
Chris Baxter.